He was becoming one of the greats. 6 world titles, millions in the bank, the fame, the glory.
World champion!
On track, he was untouchable, like a god on 2 wheels. But from one crash, everything changed.
Marc Márquez, he's gone again! Oh, that's a big crash!
The broken arm, the failed surgeries, the pain that wouldn't end. What once looked like destiny began to look like tragedy. Fans and rivals alike wondered if Marc Márquez would ever race again, or if his story had ended too soon. And yet, in 2025, the impossible happened. The rider they thought was finished rose again.
Memorable Spanish Grand Prix we've witnessed for many, many a year. What a race!
Faster, fiercer, and hungrier than ever. Not just to compete, but to reclaim the MotoGP crown. This isn't just a comeback, this is one of the greatest resurrections in the history of sport. Marc Márquez was born on February 17, 1993, in the Catalonian town of Cervera, Spain. From a very young age, Marc showed an unusual connection with 2 wheels. His father, Julià, noticed it immediately. By the time Marc was 4 years old, he was already riding a small off-road minibike. What stood out was not just his ability to ride, but the way he approached it. While other children hesitated, Marc leaned into corners aggressively, elbows out, instinctively pushing himself closer to the limit. That style, elbows and shoulders dragging on the asphalt, would become his trademark decades later in MotoGP, but it was already visible when he was only a boy. Marc wasn't alone on this journey. His younger brother, Alex, was soon following in his footsteps. The Marquez household became a place of constant bike maintenance, weekend races, and a shared dream between father and sons. The brothers grew up competing against each other, sharpening their skills not only in organized events, but in countless hours of backyard practice and local circuits. By the time Marc was 10, he was already racing in regional championships across Catalonia.
Aquest és en Marc Márquez, el noi que amb només 10 anys ja és campió de Catalunya.
His natural aggression, combined with an almost supernatural sense of balance, made him stand out. He wasn't a rider who cautiously eased his way to victory. He attacked every race like it was his last. Spectators began to notice. Coaches began to take interest. At just 15 years old, in 2008, Marc Márquez made his debut in the 125cc World Championship with the Repsol KTM team. His raw speed was evident immediately, but so too were the challenges of stepping onto the world stage. The competition was fierce, and the young Marquez had much to learn. The 2008 season was about finding his footing. He scored his first World Championship points in Portugal, showing flashes of the speed that would define his career. Taking his first podium at Donington Park.
Second place, Marc Márquez. This would be a first podium for the Spaniard, a brilliant ride.
His rise was not explosive in its first years, but it was steady, relentless, and unmistakable. Then came 2010. In only his 3rd season, at just 17 years old, Marc Márquez captured the 125cc World Championship.
Marc Márquez, the 2010 125cc World Champion!
He did it with 10 wins and 12 podiums out of 17 races, an astonishing performance that announced him as the sport's next great prodigy. What separated him from the others wasn't just speed, but a riding style that looked alien to many at the time. Márquez pushed his bike lower, leaned further, and found grip where no one else dared to search. He didn't just race the same lines as everyone else, he invented his own. His championship run in 2010 was both dominant and fearless. Rivals spoke of a rider who attacked corners as if he had no sense of consequence. Fans began to compare him to Valentino Rossi, the beloved doctor of MotoGP, not because of personality, but because of the aura he carried, a sense that he was born to win. With the 125cc title secured, Marquez took the next step up in 2011. Moto2. The intermediate class had proven difficult for many riders, But Marquez adapted quickly. In his rookie season, he won 7 races and finished second overall, despite the sport was uncertain. But Marc was not built to stop. Through rehabilitation and determination, he came back stronger. In 2012, Marquez dominated Moto2. With 9 wins, 14 podiums, and a relentless push to the front, he secured the Moto2 World Championship in commanding style. He didn't just win races, he won them with an intensity that left spectators breathless. Watching him carve through the field became a spectacle in itself. By the end of 2012, the message was clear. Marc Márquez was ready for MotoGP. The Premier class awaited, and with it, the chance to face legends like Valentino Rossi, Jorge Lorenzo, and Dani Pedrosa. Many rookies had faltered when they made the jump, but Marquez was different. He was fearless, and he was coming into MotoGP not just to compete, but to dominate. In 2013, Marc Márquez stepped onto the Repsol Honda RC213V and into a seat vacated by Casey Stoner. The expectation was enormous. The question was simple. Could a 20-year-old truly carry the weight of a factory team and a sport on debut? Under the lights of Qatar, he answered immediately. 3rd place in his very first MotoGP race, trading blows with Valentino Rossi to the flag. A rookie on the podium on the first race.
Para nada me esperaba luchar con Rossi, ser la primera Honda en la primera carrera. Para nada me esperaba ese resultado, estar en el podio.
2 weeks later, at Circuit of the Americas, the scale of what was coming became clear. A pole position and a win. And a record. The youngest MotoGP race winner at 20 years, 63 days.
Circuit of the Americas can acclaim Marc Márquez.
Marquez, the youngest ever winner of a Premier class, wins in Texas.
Across the season, he blended audacity with calculation. And when the title decider reached Valencia, Marquez closed the circle with a measured podium to clinch the championship. At 20 years and 266 days, he became the youngest Premier Class world champion in history, a record that still stands. If 2013 was a shock, 2014 was inevitability. Marquez won the first 10 races of the year, an unbroken run that bent the championship to his will, and finished the season with 13 victories, a modern-era record as he sealed title number 2. The saves became legend. Front tire folded, elbow on the deck, bike sliding at angles that shouldn't return. And somehow it did. Engineers studied the data. Young riders tried to copy the posture. Elbow down wasn't just to look cool, it was a tool. Domination breeds rivalry. With Jorge Lorenzo's precision, Dani Pedrosa's consistency, and Valentino Rossi's late career resurgence, the battles intensified. The pressure boiled over at Sepang. Contact between Rossi and Marquez sent the number 93 into the gravel.
Oh, what a season we've had.
Marquez has crashed out of Rossi.
Race direction issued 3 penalty points to Rossi for irresponsible riding, forcing him to start the Valencia finale from the back. The incident split the paddock and the grandstands for years. The controversy didn't end the questions, it deepened them. Could Marquez evolve from pure aggression to complete control? He answered by changing tempo. In 2016, Marquez added risk management to raw speed, banking podiums when victory wasn't available, striking when it was, securing a 3rd Premier Class crown.
Marquez crosses the line, he wins here in Japan, the 2016 MotoGP World Champion.
A quieter year on paper, a louder statement about maturity. The duel with Andrea Dovizioso and Ducati in 2017 went to the wire, decided at Valencia. Marquez prevailed, then backed it up in 2018 with another comprehensive title run.
Marc Márquez, he is world champion in 2018.
The pattern was familiar, but never boring. Even when the Honda wasn't the fastest bike on the grid, Marquez rode around its problems and limits. In 2019, Marc Márquez reached the peak of his career.
Marc Márquez crushes in Argentina, his first win of 2019.
Out of 19 races, he finished on the podium 18 times. He won 12 of them, and he scored 420 championship points, more than anyone had ever done in MotoGP history. It was a year that showed complete control. By the end, he had 6 world titles in 7 seasons. Crowds filled with his colors, red and orange 93s, standing against the yellow of Valentino Rossi's fans. MotoGP had found its new king, but just when it looked like he would rule for years, everything changed. In 2020, Marc Márquez was at the peak of his powers. 6 world titles in 7 years, a near-perfect 2019 season. He arrived at Jerez for the opening round, pandemic-hit season, as the clear favorite. MotoGP had returned in July, behind closed doors, with empty grandstands and silent paddocks. The world was holding its breath, and so was the sport. Marquez's race did not begin as smoothly as usual. In the early laps, he made a mistake at turn 3 and ran wide, dropping all the way back to 16th place. For most riders, that would have ended any hope of a podium. But Marquez was different. He attacked the field with the same relentless energy that had defined his career, carving through rider after rider, pulling off daring overtakes that left no doubt about his determination. With just 5 laps to go, he had climbed all the way back to 2nd place, a comeback that seemed impossible for most riders. But as he pushed again through turn 3, the same corner that had caught him out before, disaster struck, and Marquez suffered a violent high side. The impact was brutal. The humerus bone in his right arm snapped. Hours later, surgeons worked through the night, repairing the break with a titanium plate and screws. Incredibly, he returned to the paddock just a week later for the 2nd Jerez race. He tried to ride again, but his body would not obey his will. The plate broke, the damage worsened, and the dream of another title evaporated in an instant. The months that followed became a cascade of surgeries, a 2nd operation to replace the broken plate. Then, in December, a 3rd surgery, this time to fight an infection and to perform a bone graft. What was supposed to be a quick recovery had turned into a nightmare. For the first time, Marc Márquez was forced to watch MotoGP from the sidelines. He had redefined the sport with his courage and his saves, but now he was powerless. By the spring of 2021, Marc Márquez was back. 9 months after the crash that had nearly ended his career, he returned at Portimao. But this was not the same rider who had dominated the sport. Every lap was a struggle. The strength in his arm was gone, the rhythm broken, and the shadow of pain followed him everywhere. At Jerez, the site of his original injury, the nightmare almost repeated itself. In FP3, Marquez crashed hard at turn 7.
It's Marc Márquez who's gone down and the bike is a wreck.
Huge concern faces in the Marc Márquez camp. He's gone on the approach. Look at that, he's gone straight into the air vent.
The fall echoed across the paddock. The same track, the same rider, again in the gravel. He walked away, but the message was clear. The road back was far from over. And yet, Marquez refused to yield. In June, he returned to the Sachsenring, a circuit where he had never been beaten in MotoGP. Against all odds, he won. It was his first victory in 581 days.
Marc Márquez wins here in Germany. He is back and still.
The emotion on his face told the story of a champion who would not be broken. Later that year, at Misano and America, he struck again. Another 2 wins, another reminder of the brilliance that had once made him untouchable. They were not dominant victories, not the kind he had built his empire on, but they were symbolic. They proved that even battered and scarred, Marc Márquez was still capable of conquering the best in the world. But behind the celebrations was a harder truth. His body was still broken. His strength was not enough to carry him through a full season. For the 3 races he did win, Marquez had to take extra painkillers just to push himself to the limit. It was the only way he could endure the demands of racing at the very highest level. The rest of the year was brutal. He crashed 22 times across the season. Each fall was a reminder of how far he still was from the rider he once had been. The Honda was no longer the dominant machine. Against the power and stability of the Ducati, it looked fragile and unpredictable. To stay in the fight, Marquez had to override it, forcing the bike beyond its natural limits. Yet the struggle was far from over. Later that year, a training crash brought back an old enemy, diplopia, double vision. the same condition that had almost ended his career in Moto2 a decade earlier. He missed the final 2 races of the season, and once again, the doubts returned. The new season was supposed to bring answers, but for Marquez, it only brought more pain. His right arm still wasn't right, twisted, weak, and far from the weapon it once was. He fought the bike with instinct and sheer willpower, but every weekend reminded him how much his body had changed. The season began with disaster. In Indonesia, during the morning warm-up at Mandalika, he suffered a terrifying high side. The crash left him battered and forced him to miss the race.
He tips it in. Whoa! Wow! Oh, dearie me!
More worrying, the impact triggered another episode of diplopia. The double vision that had almost ended his career a decade earlier. For a rider who once seemed indestructible, it was another reminder of how fragile his career had become. But the biggest decision of all came at Mugello. Marquez admitted he could not go on like this. He announced he would leave the championship to undergo a 4th operation, this time at the Mayo Clinic in the United States. Surgeons performed a complex humeral osteotomy. They cut into his right arm bone, rotated it nearly 30 degrees to correct the misalignment, and fixed it in place with a new titanium plate and screws. It was an extraordinary risk, the kind of procedure that could end his career as easily as save it. Meanwhile, the Honda he was fighting with had hardly changed. Beyond some new aerodynamic appendages, the RC213V was essentially the same flawed machine that had broken him 2 years before. It no longer had the pace to fight the Ducatis or the balance to protect him from crashes. Marquez was not only battling his body, he was battling a bike that had fallen behind the competition. He missed much of the summer while his rivals raced on. For months he lived in recovery rooms and gyms, fighting to rebuild strength in an arm that had been operated on 4 times. When he finally returned in the autumn, it was clear he was no longer the unbeatable force of old. At Aragon, Motegi, Phillip Island, there were flashes of brilliance. The elbows came out, the impossible saves were still there, and for brief moments it felt like time had turned back. But consistency had deserted him. Every ride was a war with his own body. By the end of the season, he had managed to drag himself to 13th in the World Championship, a number that said more about his resilience than about results. 2022 was not a year of victories. It was a year of survival, of surgeries and scars. And yet, even at his lowest, Marquez refused to walk away. The year began not with promise, but with pain. In Portugal, the first race of the season, Marquez threw himself into battle like the champion he once was. But the Honda beneath him was no longer the weapon it used to be. One reckless lunge ended with him colliding with Miguel Oliveira and fractured his own right hand. It was round 1, and already the year felt cursed. The pattern never changed. Weekend after weekend, the RC213V spat him into the gravel. Practice, qualifying, races, it didn't matter. He pushed, and the bike punished him. By the end of the season, he had crashed 28 times, more than any other rider on the grid. Each fall carried a heavier toll. Each recovery left him weaker. His body was already covered in scars from years of surgery, yet he forced himself to climb back on. Loyalty kept him there. Gratitude, too. Honda had given him everything. A chance as a rookie, 6 world championships, the machine that had defined his legacy. And it wasn't just the bike, it was the people, the mechanics, the engineers, the men and women who had stood beside him in triumph and in surgery rooms, who had become like family. He didn't want to leave them. Walking away from Honda meant walking away from those faces, from the garage that had been his home for more than a decade. Marc Márquez was 30 years old by this time. In MotoGP, most riders don't last forever. They retire in their mid-30s, their bodies worn out, their speed fading. Time was running out if he wanted to keep waiting. He needed a bike that could win now. He was waiting for HRC Honda Racing Corporation to give him that machine. Something competitive, easier to ride. A bike that wouldn't demand he break himself just to scrape into the top 5 every weekend. But it didn't look like HRC were making any drastic changes. For years, the bike had fallen further behind, and nothing suggested a real turnaround was coming. He was forced to weigh that loyalty against the cost. How much more pain was he willing to endure? How many times could he slam into the asphalt for a bike that had stopped giving back? By mid-season, the truth became impossible to ignore. Ducati were untouchable. KTM and Aprilia surged forward, and Honda stood still. Beyond a few aerodynamic tweaks, the RC213V was essentially the same flawed machine that had already broken him. Marquez realized no amount of bravery could close the gap. He thought about retirement. The doubt crept in after every crash, every night spent staring at ceilings instead of sleeping. Maybe he wasn't the same rider anymore. Maybe his body had taken too much. Maybe the story had already been written. Recovery was dark, lonely, and for the first time he began to wonder if stepping away was the only way out. It was Alex, his younger brother, who refused to let him give in. Alex had made the same jump a year earlier, leaving Honda and throwing a leg over a private Ducati with Gresini. The difference was immediate. Suddenly, he was competitive again, fighting near the front, proving what the Ducati bike could do. And no one knew Marc better than Alex. They had grown up riding side by side since childhood, pushing each other on mini-bikes before the world even knew their names. Watching how the Ducati transformed his own results, Alex told Marc the truth he didn't want to hear. With this bike, you can win again.
El domingo de Japón. Estaba en la habitación después de la carrera. Dani, te puedo llamar y lo llamé.
I just can't tell you the details what the conversation was about. In his regard, he was just wanted to have this exchange of rider experience, and maybe just because I was long time also with Honda, like he's done.
And then, in the autumn of 2023, the whispers became real. On October 4th, Honda and Marc Márquez announced the unthinkable.
We are very proud to work with you.
Their partnership was over.
No me gusta decir es mi última carrera con Honda porque nunca se sabe.
11 years.
And the 11 years collaboration.
6 titles.
The ever winner of a Premier class. Marquez wins on his 100th Grand Prix appearance. Who can beat Marc Márquez? Marc Márquez wins his 6th world title.
He's done it! He wins in Thailand, and he is the 8th-time world champion!
Marc Márquez wins here at Mugello.
Marc Márquez, the new world champion in MotoGP in 2013, is the rookie.
Countless victories gone. Just over a week later, on October 12th, the paddock shook again. Marquez would ride a Ducati for Gresini Racing. To make that choice, he gave up a €25 million contract with Honda. He sacrificed the richest deal in the sport. The safety of Honda's empire was gone. What remained was risk, uncertainty, and the faint promise that, maybe on a different bike, the champion inside him could rise again. The season ended with him 14th in the World Championship standings as the top Honda rider, but his lowest finish ever in MotoGP. The numbers told the story clearly. Honda was broken, and Marquez could not keep breaking himself. The light broke through at the very end of 2023. Valencia. Post-season testing. For the first time in his career, Marc Márquez climbed onto a Ducati. The garage fell silent, the cameras locked on him, and every eye in the paddock turned to see what would happen next. For the fans, it was electric. After more than a decade in Repsol Honda colors, seeing Marquez in anything else felt almost unreal. The question burned in the air. Could the man who once bent MotoGP to his will unlock the power of a Ducati? Or was his career already over? Had he lost the touch, the speed, the edge that once made him unstoppable? The answer came quickly. Within just a handful of laps, Marquez was already near the top of the timesheets. Every split time sent a ripple through the paddock. Mechanics stopped what they were doing. Rivals watched the monitors. It wasn't just fast, it was a warning. But more important than the stopwatch was the expression on his face. For the first time in years, the smile was back. Marc Márquez wasn't just surviving anymore. He was enjoying himself again. And the sport could feel it. A storm was building. The season began with a spark. At Jerez, Spain, Marquez stood on the podium for the first time in his new colors. Second place in front of the home crowd. The cheers were louder than ever, the joy written all over his face. Then came Germany. Sachsenring, Marc and Alex together on the podium, brothers who had raced side by side since childhood, now sharing the biggest stage of all. It wasn't just a result, it was a dream fulfilled. And then, the victories. Aragon. The long wait was over. Marquez returned to the top step, beating Jorge Martin on home soil.
Marc Márquez is going to be a MotoGP race winner once again. One of the greatest comebacks. All the blood, sweat and tears, all the surgeries, all the sacrifices have been worth it. He joined Ducati to enjoy racing again. He joined Ducati to win again.
Misano, Ducati's backyard. And there was Marquez, out-dueling Pecco Bagnaia, silencing doubts with another win.
Marc Márquez in Misano. Marc Márquez is your Grand Prix winner here. 3.1 seconds clear he is of Pecco Bagnaia.
Phillip Island, a track that had always felt like his cathedral. The elbows came out, the fearless attacks returned, and victory number 3 of the year was his. The old magic, reborn. And remember, all of this was done on a year-old GP23, while Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin had the brand-new GP24. Marquez was fighting with less, yet still proving he could match the very best. But 2024 had its own hurdles. For Marc to make the move to Ducati's factory team, he had to give up some of the personal sponsors who had stood by him for years. Brands like Red Bull, Oakley, and Allianz. It was another sacrifice, not just of money, but of long-standing partnerships that had shaped his career. By the end of the season, Ducati faced an impossible choice. Keep Martin, the loyal soldier who had carried their colors, or take Marquez, the proven champion reborn. In the end, the decision was inevitable. The 6-time MotoGP king would wear factory red in 2025. 2024 wasn't just about results. It was about rediscovery, the joy of racing, the love of the fight, and the simple truth, Marc Márquez wasn't finished. He was smiling again, and that smile was dangerous. The season began under the blazing sun of Thailand, and Marc Márquez lit it up from the very first weekend. Pole position, sprint victory, and a dominant Grand Prix win. The perfect start. Even better, his brother Alex joined him on the podium. A Marquez 1-2 that set the tone for what would become a remarkable year. From that moment, the rhythm never stopped. Podiums arrived almost every weekend, and many of them he shared with Alex. The sight of the two brothers standing side by side, smiling in Ducati red, became one of the most joyful images of the season. The wins came in waves. At Aragon, Marc delivered a home victory in front of his Spanish fans. At Misano, he conquered Ducati's own backyard, out-dueling Pecco Bagnaia in a race that felt like a statement. Each result carried the same message. The champion inside him had never left. By the time the championship caravan reached Motegi, Japan, the statistics were staggering. 11 Grand Prix victories and 14 sprint wins in just 17 rounds. And at Motegi, Marc finished second, more than enough to clinch the 2025 MotoGP World Championship with 5 races still to go.
But through all the dark days of surgeries, of broken arms, of diplopia, he may have never thought this day would come again. You can hear him.
You would need to have a heart of stone not to be moved right now by the images, these moving images which we are watching.
The emotion was almost too much to contain. For Marc, this was more than a title. It was the end of years spent in darkness. He thought of the surgeries that seemed never-ending, the pain that refused to fade, and the crashes that made him question who he was. He remembered the doubt, the moments when walking away felt closer than continuing. And now, after all of it, he stood as a champion again. The darkness he had endured only made the light brighter. His 7th MotoGP crown was not just a number. It was proof of resilience, of endurance, of refusing to surrender. One of the greatest comebacks in the history of sport. Marc Márquez, the champion reborn.